Questions, questions, questions. We are going to answer some of your questions today, all about who we are as conscious beings, as spirit, what happens when you die. Oh, a million questions. I have a client, Peter, who sent me a long list of questions. And so we're going to attempt to answer some of them and any questions that you have in the chat. If you're listening live online, stay tuned.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
G'day, and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness with Karen Swain. So it's just me today. I'm the guest today, but I have my good friend Kristen with me. Yay, Kristen, Miss Mash, welcome. Who's going to help me out with the chat? Oh, I can see there's a few in chat. Hello, there's lots of people saying g'day in the chat already. So Kristen is going to help me out. And Kristen, let me tell you a little bit about Kristen. We have been friends, I don't even know how long for, but Kristen's amazing. She's also been on the show. Let me share this screen. Sharing, I think that I probably knew you for about 5, 6, 7 years before you even came on the show, sharing some of your amazing spiritual journey and your adventures with spirit and your the crossing of your beloved husband, and also working with the IANS team and working as a Reiki practitioner and shamanic teacher. And so Kristen's amazing too. If you want to check out our conversation, Kristen Miss Mash is her name. Death, Loss and Miracles is what we called the show when we had you on the show. Yeah. Anything you want to say about that? She was so nervous. How long? I knew, Paige. I'm like, when am I going to get you on the show? When am I going to get you on the show?
Years.
Stuff kept happening. I think I even said it to you even before your husband got sick, and you went through the whole cancer journey and you went through the death journey. And of course, like anything, when someone you love and know really well dies, it really deepens your spiritual quest. Did you find that?
I did, definitely, yes. And it facilitated a lot more understanding and grief, So it hasn't been that tough of a journey, but it has had its ups and downs. And the spirituality really does bring so much more light to it. Yeah.
And it also deepened your quest to know yourself as a healer.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You've got this sick husband. You've dabbled in the healing arts, but then you've got someone right next to you that's sick, and so you were, doing all you could, weaving your magic to help him stay alive. And when that, didn't make him stay alive, then it got you in touch with your guidance, and your guidance came through really clearly and said, well, this was supposed to happen, and this is why this happened, and this happened. So huge benefits to all of this, even though it's traumatic going through it, right?
Correct. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of good benefits. Lots of miracles with it.
Lots of miracles. So I'm going to say g'day to the ladies online, Mish and Heidi.
Hello, everyone.
Boulder, and of course the beautiful Shirley. All these gorgeous ladies. Thanks, Heidi, for your love. Heidi is a big fan of the network. I see you because I check out quite a few of the shows on the network. I forgot to tell you that we're on what network we're on. Let me do that. The United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 and 107.7 FM syndicated radio, hitting about 120 countries, and we're streaming. I was actually telling Joe about this, saying we're streaming on StreamYard on 8 platforms, and he said, actually, we're streaming on many more platforms than that. I don't exactly know how it all works, the syndicated radio network. Somebody said to me the other day, if I'm not tuning in on the platforms, Facebook, Rumble, Odyssey, and YouTube, if I'm not tuning in on those platforms, how do I listen to the, on the syndicated radio? And I'm like, I don't know. That's a good question. I guess you've got to go to the website.
Ask your guides like you're going to ask them today.
They don't answer things like that. They said, look it up on Google. Perfectly imperfect. Hello from PA. And Heidi says, United Public Radio Network, grateful for so many of you. Yeah, you get around and you support everyone. I love that. Anyway, questions. Let's go over a few of the questions, because I have to say, when we understand who we are as infinite creative intelligence, and that we are omnipresent and an extension of the source, that understanding, when you really understand that, actually answers many of the questions, because many of the questions that are coming in are things like, how does spirit sustain themselves? Is there such thing as entertainment in spirit? This is talking about when we reemerge and we leave this life. Is there a shutdown period, such as a rest and recovery? Are all spirits the same gender? Can spirits get sick? Who organizes spirits, and what do they do, and what goals do they have to accomplish? Do spirits, while in spirit, ever experience conflict, jealousy, envy, arrogance, deceit, or bad behavior? So, and there's probably about 40 more questions after that, but I'm just going to start with those. And so when we understand that we are an extension of the source, and then we understand what the source is, like source is pure positive energy, and there is no time when we reemerge out of this dimension. Actually, if you think about it like this, if you think about the source being all that is, the earth experience is just another dimension of the all that is. It's another experience that you as a soul or a spirit can have. We think of earth and then there is spirit, but earth is our reality. And then there is another reality, or the other side, as we've called it. But actually, when you reemerge back to that other side, earth is just another playground, another dimension that you can play in as a soul. And there are infinite, you wouldn't really want to count, because even the earth plane has like what is called, I have a friend who helped me with the book. Forgot to mention my books. Yeah, I put out a book with a friend, Cyrus Kirkpatrick, called Awakened by Death, which is 12 stories of transformation through the death experience. What I was talking about with Kristen, sometimes the death experience can be the most transformative thing that we ever experience. And Cyrus is a conscious astral traveler, where he can just sit and pop out of his body and pop into his body at will. And he has he retains full memory of being in and out of the body. But he would play in the lower astral planes, or the astral planes that are closer to Earth. So he used to call that second Earth. So when you're finished with your physical life, you can go and play in second Earth and still have a physical-like experience. So he used to say he'd go to bars and people would have punch-up fights in bars. It's like, if that's what you want to do, go to a bar and get drunk and have a punch-up fight. You can do that. It's not exactly the same as the Earth experience. It's slightly different. Time runs faster. Pain isn't as much. Like if you get punched in the face, it's not going to hurt as much. It's a different experience. I had a girlfriend who died when she was 40. She was one of the people that was affected by thalidomide, the drug that was given to pregnant mothers in the 60s, and a lot of deformed babies were born. Living to 40 was a great old age, because many of them died before they were 40. But Nikki died when she was 40, and she had never really traveled the earth because she was so sick all the time. No insurance company would insure her. And so she was too scared to move too far away from home, because if she got sick and didn't have insurance, that would be a bit of a nightmare. So she never really traveled. So she died with this desire to know more about the planet and to have traveled. Anyway, her boyfriend, who she was with at the time she died, came to see me, and he was really missing her. They met at the transplant clinic. They were both on, she needed a heart-lung transplant and he needed a heart transplant, and fell in love and had a relationship. And he was really upset that she had gone. And he said, I keep dreaming about Nikki every night. I said, really? What are you doing? She said, He said, we're traveling the world. We're traveling. We're going all over the world. So here's her and him. He's still in body. She's out of body, fulfilling that desire that she didn't fulfill in this lifetime of traveling the earth in that astral realm of second earth. There are many stories of people that move to second earth. They haven't finished with the earth experience and they're still having earth-like experience on second earth or astral earth. So there are many, many, many dimensions we can go to after we reemerge from this experience. But when we return to our home or heaven or source, where we're omnipresent and we understand the unity of all, we understand that we are one with the source and therefore we have the same capability as the source. We can know everything. We can see everything. I was talking to my guides about this last night. Imagine like thinking about all the planets and dimensions and all the things that go on. Just think about all the things that go on Earth. You wouldn't want to know about all that. And they said to me, well, it's kind of like the analogy is like Google. If Google or a search engine, let's call it a search engine, can access everything that's on the internet, you only really access it when you want to access it. You don't know it all at once. But if you have a thought when you're in spirit, I want to know about this, you can know it immediately. It's a bit like we can, through the internet. And I said, okay, that makes sense. Because imagine knowing everything all at once about everything. It would be a little overwhelming, but we have that capacity to be one with everything and know everything. So when we understand that we are unified with everyone and everything, and that we have that unity creates that connection down here on earth, we can call it telepathy or empathy, where we feel what the other person feels as if we are that person. That's the experience we can have as spirit after we reemerge from the physical dimensions. Then all these questions are like, how does spirit sustain themselves? They don't need to sustain themselves because they're one with source, and source is the source of all energy, everything. So there's no need to sustain yourself. Entertainment, is there such thing as entertainment? Well, if you read Garnet Schulhauser's books, and maybe Kristen, you might want to pop in with this, he said that there is a place called Galea. What's the name of the city he goes to in the afterlife? Galea. Do you remember? Oh, you're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
It's Aglaia.
Aglaia. And he says that as spirits, you can don that personality that you've been on earth, and you can, like if you were the Beatles or Elvis Presley, and you can play music and have rock concerts. And he said that people are walking around in this city. Again, it's a city or a dimension of the afterlife that we can play in as souls, as spirit. You can dress in any time period that you liked, like you could be a futuristic time period, or wear the big frilly outfits they wore in the 15th century or 17th century, or look like a caveman, or look like a space person. I mean, you can be anything, because thought creates instantaneously. So if you think about it, it manifests instantaneously. So yeah, entertainment. There is entertainment if you want entertainment. But entertainment is also a concept of the human mind that says, I'm bored, I need to be entertained. And so in spirit, when you're in the spirit realm, if we're in a realm of pure positive energy, one of the questions here was, what's that question about, can spirits get sick? No. If you want to have the sick experience, you can move into a dimension where you can have a sick experience, Earth, for instance, or other realms like the lower astral realms. There are realms in the astral that we've created to experience what we call the hell realms, if that's something you want to experience. If you think about it, like on Earth, I often think about people that go to fun parks, and there is the house of horrors in the fun park because you want to experience that terror, or you watch a horror movie. I mean, you're wanting that experience of being terrified. And it doesn't sort of make sense that we would want to go to a hell realm to have that experience of being terrified. But yeah, you can if you want to. People do, right? So what was one of the questions? Do spirits ever experience? Here it is: conflict, jealousy, envy, arrogance, deceit, or bad behavior. Not when you've re-emerged back to your true self, because you come from this pure positive energy. And because we're swimming in an ocean of pure positive energy, before you've come into an experience of an earth type experience or a denser reality, you just don't know what any of those experiences are like. And so there is a wanting to know. If you've never experienced something before, there is a desire to experience it, even though when you get here and you experience it, you say, get me out of here, I don't want to experience that. There is a desire to experience that. So when you're in spirit, unless you come into an experience like an astral realm or a physical realm or the denser realms, no, you don't experience bad behavior. I like that. What's bad behavior? Can spirits get sick? How do spirits organize? What do they do? And what goals do they have accomplished? That's a big question. I think that's a whole show. What do you reckon, Kristen?
Right? That is a whole show. There is so much in that. I do want to go back to something you answered a moment ago, if that's all right. And you were talking about the spirits and when they go to their side or they return to spirit, they don't have all of those negative feelings that we have or those fears. But it's really interesting. My late husband comes around often, and we were together for 26 years. And so, I have memories of all the best times and the most challenging times. But when he shows up in spirit, even though I recognize his energy, I only ever feel all the best parts of him. Like the happy, the full, fun, charismatic. I never experience any of the things that he would do that bothered me, or his, in life when we shared this planet and we were together, I could just tell when he was in a bad mood by how he felt, like his vibration. But I don't ever feel that. I only feel the beautiful vibrations. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've had this so often with people who have been through the illness of someone, a loved one, a brother, a lover, a husband, a mother, and they've seen them really sick. And when they do have an experience, I remember my friend Cassie, her brother died suddenly of a heart attack. He did have a bad heart, so everybody knew he had a bad heart, but he just dropped dead one day, and he was in his 30s. And she was grieving. She was really in grief for so long. And then one day she said, I said to her, have you been dreaming about Luke? And she said, I have. And he came to me and he looked so young and handsome and healthy and sparkly. And everyone says that when they do have that contact with who they are on the other side, they are still presenting as the identity and the person that we knew them as while we're still physically incarnate. So we have that recognition. But they always look, and sometimes when people die when they're really old, they present as 30 or 40 or in their 20s. And if you didn't know them in their 20s, maybe it's hard to recognize them. But I was actually chatting to the guides about this just before we came on, about spirit recognition, because I was looking at some of the questions and they were answering it already. And in our true home, we are beyond identity. So remember I shared in the Inner Sanctum chat, I Am Light by India Ari.
Yes.
I am light. I am light. I have had that song running through my head ever since. So I kept thinking about, okay, if we are light, if we are just light, and again in Garnet's books, he talks about meeting two souls that have never been to Earth. I said, what do they look like? And he said, like orbs of light. And he was chatting to them. And they said, oh, what's Earth like? And then he said, well, go and have a look. And they had a look and they said, oh, God, it looks a bit harsh for us. We don't think we'll go there. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
Imagine not having identity bodies. We're so rooted in how people are as what they look like in their body. But when we're beyond body, we're light. And so I was asking them, so how do we identify each other if we don't know what we look like? And they said through the signature, the energy signature. And I said, explain that more. And they said, well, when you're looking at someone at the back of them in a crowd and you know that it's that person, but it could be anybody because it's just the back of somebody, but you recognize them through their energy signature. You might say in your head, I recognize your hair or the clothes that you're wearing or the hat, the cap you had on, or I just recognized you because I saw you. But in fact, they just look like anybody else from the back, but you recognize them as their energy signature. And that's how we recognize each other as souls when we're not wearing bodies. Yeah, because we understand who the energy signature is. And we can also recognize people who have incarnated back into different bodies because of that energy signature. In the book Autobiography of a Yogi, he talks about a young man that he knew who died young. And he was, I don't know, he was a student with him or he was teaching him. I can't remember the relationship. But he says, I'll recognize you when you come back. And then when he's born again into a baby's body, he recognized the soul because he knew the energy signature of the soul, even though the soul was wearing a different body. Yeah. Anything you want to say about that, dying one?
Oh, I've just experienced that as well, not just with my late husband, but with other, beings. I have spirit guides and they have different energy signatures. That's how I know who it is, because I don't necessarily hear their voice, but I get their guidance and I know which one it is just by how they feel. So
Exactly.
I have friends who have animals, and I think there's some questions in here about pets and animals. And I have friends whose pets have passed over. And I mean, I just love to ask, like, hey, do you ever feel them around? And they can tell the difference of which pet it is of theirs that has come to comfort them or enjoy that walk with them. So yeah, there are questions in here about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions says, does spirit ever manifest as an animal or an insect? What happens to animals, birds, fish, and mammals when they die? Do spirits speak or communicate telepathically in the same language? Okay, so a soul is a soul is a soul is a soul. Energy is energy is energy. Consciousness is consciousness. We can have the experience, as I said. If you want to have the horror ride at the you can do the hell realms. You can come in as a tree or a planet or a rock. You can flow through. Your consciousness can flow through that and have the experience of that. I've actually had that in this experience. I've always wanted to fly like anybody else, and I had an experience like years ago, can't even tell you how many years ago, of hitching a ride inside a bird and feeling the wind rushing past me and the sound of the wind as you're flying through the wind. Like I was amazed at how loud it was and feeling the wind ruffle my feathers. So I sort of jumped on a bird and had that experience. My consciousness, was inside a bird, having that experience while I was still in this body. But as souls, as spirits, we can be animals, and there's a lot of agreements with people who come in as animals. There's like a soul agreement. I'll be your pet. My cat, has been with me 3 times. And she's she's over 10 now. It's a he, actually. She was a she for 20 years. I had a black cat for 20 years. It was a she, and then he came back as a boy black cat. And I swore I'd never get another cat because I wanted the freedom of not having an animal so I could travel or do whatever I want. But no, there was an agreement. He was coming back, and I'm so glad he did. He's such a little, he's my companion. He's my soulmate. It's like the person I speak to the most because he's here right next to me all the time.
The listeners in the chat are talking about some experiences like that. Gloria, she says her cat jumps on her bed and she can feel his paws walking over, and she keeps turning around. Nope, he's not there, but she feels them. So, yeah.
And also Raphael Tamura, Michael Tamura's wife, who is a psychic and communicates with animals. She speaks about her dog who's reincarnated 3 times, and I had her on the show, and she spoke. Because a black cat's a black cat's a black cat, but a dog has there's a bit more variety to the dog body. Like you can have different personalities and different shapes and different temperaments. And she said that this soul had been a dog 3 times with completely different temperaments. And she spoke about the evolution of the soul through the dog body and what the dog could do. Like some dogs are lap dogs, and some dogs, like huskies, are like freedom-seeking dogs that just want to escape. My daughter had a husky, wants to escape and run and just be free. Like different dogs have different temperaments. And so the soul can experience the different temperaments of different animals and dogs. There's an infinite possibility of who we are and what we can experience. And do we all speak telepathically? That was a question I pondered before we came on, and the guide said, telepathy is an experience that we have when we're incarnate to communicate. But if while you're a soul and you are one with the other, you just know the other. There's just a knowing. There's no telepathy. There's no language being people that have had near-death experience speak about telepathy. I was talking, but my mouth wasn't moving, so I was hearing their thoughts. But even that's an experience sort of lower than who we are when we reemerge back into the oneness of source and we're just orbs of light. You just know what the other is thinking. So because you kind of live inside the head, you're one with the other. It's hard to understand this concept.
It is, and it begs a question that I get sometimes when I'm having conversations like this with my friends, and it is, if Karen, you and I are speaking telepathically all the time, and you know what I'm thinking, do I have any personal thoughts? Do I have things you don't? And so speak to that, because that does come up often.
Well, in spirit, you don't have any personal thoughts. You don't have any privacy, but you don't need that. You don't need privacy. But when we're here on Earth, I've often spoken to my galactic guides about this. Specifically, the Greys have showed me how telepathy works when you're incarnate in a physical body. So they're in bodies, they're in Grey bodies. And I said, yeah, is there any privacy? Like, how do you have privacy? And they said, we have mastered the mind, like different streams of information running. You can block one off. And they used the Zoom. We were using Zoom at the time I asked them, and we were doing breakout rooms in the Zoom. And they said, it's a bit like, using that as an analogy, if you want to have a conversation just with someone, it's like having a breakout room in the Zoom where the two of you move to a breakout room and you can have a conversation and the others can't hear you. Like, you can do that. You can master your mind so that you can send a stream of consciousness to one person and block other people from hearing that. It's amazing, the agility, the mastery of mind that they have. In fact, they showed me that a person could stand on a stage and speak to hundreds, maybe thousands of people, and send a different stream of consciousness to each person, have a different conversation with each. I mean, it's amazing what is possible. Like, as people who are learning to focus and learning the mastery of mind, humans, we are preschool. We're not even kindergarten when it comes to mastering our mind. I mean, listen to people who meditate and they say, I can't meditate, my mind just drives me crazy. I hate meditation. I've never learned to meditate. It's like we just can't sit quietly and allow thoughts to just come and go because it sort of drives us crazy. But yeah, we're learning to master our mind, and that's what deliberate creation is all about, learning to master frequency and vibration and mind. But yeah, so as telepathic beings, when we're physically incarnate, you can have privacy. You can block someone off. I don't know how, but I've not mastered it, but they've shown me that is possible, or not. In spirit, you don't need to, because there are no secrets. You're not plotting to murder somebody, you know. You're not sleeping with someone's wife or whatever. It's a little different.
A little different. See, Karen, always, you bring so much light, and these are serious topics, and you make it enjoyable, actually. I love it.
Thank you, darling one.
Yeah.
What does he say here? Do spirits from different galaxies and planets gather in the same place as spirits originating from Earth? Now, this is an interesting question. It's like he's saying that spirits originate from Earth. Spirits originate from source. Spirits originate from source. We don't originate from Earth. And then the Earth realm is another dimension that spirits can play in, or souls can play in. But this is a question I've posed to Garnet as well, when he goes to Aglaya and he hangs out with spirits in different guises, doing different things and playing with their identity of who they were as human. I said, did you see any ETs and aliens there? And he said, no, I didn't. And I said, so where did the aliens go when they die? You know, the ETs go when they die. And he said, I don't know. So I had to ask the guides about that. And again, a soul is a soul is a soul is a soul. But if you're having incarnate experience, a lot of incarnate experience as one species, like on a different planet or galaxy, then there is because the Agladia is just like another created realm that we create, because we create through thought. And we've created this beautiful city called Agladia where we can go and play and have that experience of taking on that identity as who we were as humans. So ETs can do that too. Why not? But then there are realms beyond that where you're beyond the identity. So Agladia is still when we're playing with identity, but you can move beyond that dimension to a dimension where you're one and you understand that you've been a rock, a fish, an ET, a planet. You've been many different identities. Yeah, a lizard, a reptilian, a grey, and but they can also create astral realms where they can play in identity of the same identity. They're saying that, that is not as common as the Earth, as Agladia, as the Earth, because Earth is so much more fun. There's so much variety. Actually, I was having this chat with the guides the other day about this. I was talking to my galactic mob, actually, because when we hear about greys, we hear about them all looking the same and wearing the same thing. And they were saying it's so much fun as humans to like dress up, like the Ponte, the Ponte with Sue Walker and Kevin Estra. Like the Ponte are these greys, but they love the way humans put on hats and makeup and flowers in their hair, and they cut their hair and put on different outfits. They actually think that's really fun. And that's what they were telling me the other day when I was asking about that. That they look upon this Earth experience and the variety, like what we get up to as humans. And there's a lot of stuff that they've moved past, they've moved beyond, but they still see as really fun. So they're showing me that as spirits, we still like that. Imagine if you're creating with thought, that with a thought, you could look like a hippie, or you could look like somebody in the 17th century with these big outfits, or you could look like just with thought you could change your clothes or identity and play with that.
It's making a connection for me, because that's being creative and creativity, and it sounds like what the Ponte just love how creative we can be. Right. And, I have a lot of friends that are artists and musicians, and I've watched it, when I'm in a room and musicians are creating a song, they really do get connected right up to spirit or to the other realms. And so that's interesting that we live in such a place that we get to express creativity, and yet they admire it. And that's actually a way that we connect. And I don't believe we know, or most creative people know, that they're actually doing that, but they talk a lot about being in the zone and things like that. And
absolutely.
And it's interesting that these beings from other planets find that fun.
Yeah.
And it's just us.
Yeah, I know. We get dressed every morning like, oh, what am I going to put on? But to have that variety of like, I'm going to wear and look different today than I did yesterday, that's really fun to them, because they just look the same. They've kind of moved past the need to do that. Like, we're still rooted in identity, and we see ourselves as our human body. And, what does my hair look like? What do my clothes look like? That's sort of part of my identity. We're still rooted in that idea. They've moved beyond that. It's not necessary for them to do that, but they still think it's fun.
There was another interview that I listened to a couple weeks ago, and one man was interviewing another man who was channeling, or channels like the Arcturians or some, divine, race from the other, from another planet. And they were saying, and I would love for you to ask your guides, this is why I'm bringing it up. But he was saying that they told him, what sets the human beings on Earth apart from every other planet in the galaxies and all the realms is that we create music. Is that true? Nobody else creates music and song.
They're saying, no, that's not true. But the way that we create music is widely revered amongst the cosmos. But they create music on other realms, in other planets. They definitely do, but different. Okay, so what they're sharing with me right now is because of the level of separation to who we are as spirit or source, because we don't communicate telepathically as a common thing. And we're, in these little bubbles of identity feeling separate, because we have that, how we can, just like you said, let go of that identity structure of being one and merge into the unity. And that's what we're doing when we're creating music. And they're amazed at that we're so rooted in separation, and yet we can come together and create this incredible music. They find that really amazing and fascinating. And like, how do they do that? Like, they're so, like in ego, embedded in ego, and yet that they can come together and create symphonies that are so magnificently beautiful. I'm just thinking the angels are popping in, like the music of the spheres. The angels are saying, where do you think that comes from? It's us. They create the music of the spheres. The angels are popping in. Hello, angels. I love the angels. What about you? Sorry.
Hello. What else do they have to say?
The angels have always got, they feel so soft and beautiful, the angels. But once, a long time ago, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, a girlfriend had two friends over. One was an ex-Swedish opera singer, and the other one was a musician. And we just the four of us had this really impromptu, there was an old piano, and the musician got on there and started bashing away. He wasn't playing any particular song. He was just making it up as he goes along. He was just playing, and this opera singer just started singing, and the two of us were sitting on the stairs next to the piano. I don't know, she had it in sort of like at the end of a hallway. Anyway, it was funny, down some stairs, and listen to this amazing concert, like private concert. It was sublime and blissful. And after they finished, the two of them looked at each other and burst into laughter. And my friend Kate and I looked at them and said, what's so funny? And they said, all of that was completely made up and in the moment. Like it was just the magic of these two beings coming together who didn't really know each other very well, and just tuning into that channeling, if you like. They were channeling it in this perfect harmony, like it was rehearsed, it was amazing. And they were amazed that they did it.
What a beautiful thing for you to be able to witness.
Beautiful. It was beautiful. So that is an example of what they're talking about, that we can be so rooted in ego and selfish and me, it's all about me, and yet we can merge out of that me idea and come together as we in that creating of music. Yeah, beautiful. What do we got? What's happening in the chat? Anything going on in the chat?
Yeah, Mish asks or says that they would love to hear from a spirit who was an abductee when they were on Earth, like when they were in their Earth carnation, and then you get to the other side, and then you get to see the higher perspective and the whole picture. That would be very interesting. I don't know if you have a way to...
I think you've asked that question before, Mish. It's a great question. I'm pretty sure that question has been asked before when I had someone on the show. It might have been Rowan, who was abducted, or somebody on the show. Well, what they see is that everything that happens, including abductions, is a part of their soul plan. That was something that the soul wanted to experience, and there's a reason for it, because often, not always, often the soul that has incarnated in the human incarnation, in the human experience, has been that ET, like a grey, or that particular flavor of ET, and they've had an agreement with that race to help that race through the human experience. And so they incarnate. I had a woman on the show, whose name I always forget, where she remembers her life as a grey, choosing to come in as a human, and she was doing her soul planning episode as an incarnated grey alien, and saying, when I go to Earth, I'm going to take on all this stuff like death, divorce, drama, disease, like all the things that they couldn't experience as ETs, because they've moved beyond that experience, or they just didn't have that experience in their experience. So she wanted to experience that, but also there was an agreement that they would be a part of the hybrid program, because maybe they've evolved out of their emotional body and they wanted to bring that emotional body more back online. So there was an agreement that she would take on a human form, and that they could take their eggs or the DNA to splice to create a new race that had more. Like there's infinite amounts of agreements, but always, you get to see that perspective when you reemerge and you go back to your soul, that all the things that you experience here on earth was an agreement that the soul was wanting, even though it might not feel like it at the time. This woman, do you remember her name? From Fear to Love. She wrote a book, From Fear to Love. And
it's so
it was
familiar, but it's not coming.
When she was abducted, she was terrified and in huge amounts of fear. And then she was abducted so many times that she started to have this memory of this soul planning time. And she moved from terror, being abducted by these grey aliens, to love. She said that one time when she was abducted, her arm flung out because, you know, a lot of them are paralyzed, hypnotized, paralyzed, so they can't move their body. And this little grey alien flung across the room. She hit this flew across the room, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that." But she was paralyzed, and she was trying not to be paralyzed, and then bang, her arm flew out like that and hit this little grey alien. And he flew across the room, and she felt so terrible that she did that because she didn't mean to. And she said he was so soft and light, and hitting him was like not like hitting a human. It was like sort of, he was so light that he flew across the room. Yeah. And then she when she stopped the fear, they stopped paralyzing her, because they only paralyzed her so that they wouldn't get hurt, because when we're in fear, you know, we get really aggressive as humans. And once she stopped the fear, they'd take her for trips around the ship and show her all this stuff and have conversations. And yeah, she went from fear to love. So and then she remembered that her soul memories came back. Oh, I chose all this. This was an agreement that we had together. So yeah. So even though people have these horrific experience of being terrified, there's usually a soul agreement. Yay, Sherry. Hi, Karen and Kristen. Hello, Day.
Hi, honey.
Hello.
But, you know, that kind of leads to some of these questions like, you know, can a spirit choose another planet to return on reincarnation?
Absolutely.
And how do you select your parents? What's the criteria? Can we?
That in itself is a whole show. But if you're having, can you choose another? It depends what the soul wants to experience and the soul wants to learn. And it might choose to just incarnate for, even though there's no such thing as time on the other side, but we're going to talk in linear time, for a chunk of time, for a period of time. You might, okay, so they're telling me it's like going to school. All right. So you might be interested in singing and dancing and painting and writing books and a whole lot of things. But for a chunk of time, you go to a school, and for a chunk of time, you focus on learning one thing. And then when you feel like you've got it, then you might go somewhere else and learn something else. That's kind of like what we do as souls. So we might sort of focus on the earth plane, or we could focus on other incarnates on other realities, such as other planets. And but we can do it also simultaneously. There is infinite selection. They're just showing me infinite selection depending on what the soul is choosing to experience. So when I ask my guides, have I been an alien? Have I been, another life? They said to me something really funny. They said, oh my God, do you think that you're any less curious as a soul than you are as a person? Because I'm always asking a million questions. What about that? But what about this? But I want to know about that. And they said, you've been everywhere, because you're like, oh, I want to know what that is. Oh, I want to know what that is. Oh, I want to. And I thought, I laughed at that. I just laughed at that. Yeah,
that's
my curiosity.
Beautiful explanation, because we're curious. Period.
We're curious. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Imagine if you've grown up in the tropics and you see pictures of people in the snow building snowmen, and you just can't imagine what that's like. Like, what does it feel like? It's cold and it's wet, but it sticks together. Like, you just can't imagine being cold or playing with snow, and you go, I'd really like to know what that experience is like. And so, yeah, you go to a place where the snow.
If it's okay to interject this, when I had started to really open up spiritually, and I had left the organized religion behind, one of the last things that I struggled wrapping my head around, not that I didn't believe in it, but I couldn't wrap my head around it, was reincarnation. Because it wasn't a part of a conversation I ever had growing up, unless I saw it as a weird thing on TV. And that kind of explanation if I'm supposed to be here to learn things and to be taught or to experience, there's no way that I could experience everything there is
in one lifetime.
In one lifetime. And I don't know why I needed it explained to me that way, but I did. And, those that grow up as Inuits in the Arctics, they have no idea what a tree is. They've never seen a tree.
Right.
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I know. Yeah, imagine being a soul or a spirit looking down at all the different planets, all the different realms, all the different experiences, and saying, ooh, where do I want to go next? I mean, do you remember Naya, Yvonne Ballard? She was in my book, Awakened by Death. She's since left her body. But she was a nurse who had a near-death experience, and she had the most extensive near-death experience. I wanted her to put that near-death experience in the book, but she also identified herself as a teacher. Once I got a hold of her, she's like, yeah, I'm here to, share my knowledge with people. And she got very, she started telling people what to eat and everything in the chapter in the book. But when I had her on the show, she spoke about being a point of consciousness and exploring. She felt like she was out of her body for years, but here on Earth, it was only for, I don't know, maybe she was in a coma for a few days. I can't remember what the time stamp was on Earth, but she was flying around the cosmos. And she said, if I wanted to know how an atom works, I would just dive into the center of an atom and be an atom and just look at the energy and the energy spinning around in an atom. Or if I wanted to pull myself out and look at the multiverse, she could just that macro to micro, like as points of consciousness, as souls, we can be and do and go anywhere. And I mean, it's just infinite. Like,
that's
amazing.
Like curiosity, like
amazing.
Conscious curiosity or something like that.
She also spoke about the heaven realms and the hell realms, because I called her chapter in the book Heaven is Empty, because she said she went to these created heaven realms where people who had grown up in religion thought that when they die and they're good people, they go to heaven. And what happens? There are angels with harps and people sitting on fluffy clouds and big beautiful crystal buildings. And so they had created these heaven realms with their consciousness, with thought, and they had moved. And she said, but there was no one there with them. There was, like, they were in this beautiful heaven type realm, but it was empty. Like, they were there alone. And I just started laughing and I said, heaven is empty. But they created this heavenly place where angels and harps. But she said when people created hell realms, often people thought there are a lot of bad people on Earth. I won't be alone. And so when they created the hell realms, it was always full of people.
Wow, that's like carrying those limiting beliefs, right? Along.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. And then how long do we carry those when we get to the other side? I mean, how long is that acclimation into, right?
Again, there's no such thing as time, but if we're talking from a linear understanding about time, she said that people soon, both in hell and the heaven realms, they soon realize, I'm bored. I don't want this experience. I want something else. I want to move out of this. And especially with the people in the heaven realms all alone, they were bored. Where is everybody? Where is everybody? Where is the rest of the people? Yeah. And a lot of people that, like Howard Storm, often when they have an experience of a created hell realm, they will not like it because it doesn't feel good. And so they'll ask. And he was an atheist. Like, he said that he was an atheist. And when he had the out-of-body experience and he went to the hell realm, he cried out to a God he didn't believe in. And in that moment of crying out, he experienced the light. And so often the hell realms are created for the soul or the consciousness to have that asking to remember the light. And that's what Howard did. And he was taken out of his hell experience.
Yeah. I'm being reminded of a beautiful story a friend of mine tells of a near-death experience she had as a child. And she went to like a classroom, sort of like an auditorium type setting. Mm-hmm. And it was not a beautiful experience that had caused her to get that. There was some abuse that had gone on. And she's like, why am I here by myself? Where is everybody? Like this child going, where's my team? And she was able to be given this higher perspective. Well, everybody else in her soul family or her team were actually incarnated on Earth. And she was just taking a break up there. Is that an interesting perspective? I had never heard that before.
Well, this is a great segue into this question. I've got to find it. Can spirits choose to be on other planets? How long after dying can a spirit return to Earth?
Yeah.
So again, a question rooted in physical identity, where we're clumps, where we're one identity. But I've had chats with the guides about this too. They've shown me this elaborate image of who the soul or the oversoul is. And the only way I can describe it without drawing it with a 3D type drawing experience is that, because everything was moving, it was all motion, like atoms, like photons in an atom, that the oversoul, the part of you that spins out from the source that we call the oversoul or the higher self, has all this, like a sun has rays, like have all these rays of extending itself into different dimensions. And so you can extend yourself into an earth dimension, an astral dimension, and many different dimensions, other planets and so on. So that's a question, again, rooted in physical identity. How long after you die can you reincarnate? I had a friend who was dying, and he had lots of children, and he kept asking me for healing, but I'd spoken to his soul or his higher self, and they said, no, he's finished with this incarnation. He's coming home, and it won't be too long. It's hard to tell someone that when you know that, but I just said to him, sure, I'll give you a healing. And what I did is I gathered all his children and all his grandchildren together, and I got them all to say what they wanted to say before he left his, like, what do you want to say? Like, what do you want to say to your child? And what does your child want to say to you? So it was this beautiful family experience. Oh, it's going to make me cry. Anyway, his youngest grandchild at the time, because it was over a decade ago that he left his, when he started speaking to him, I think he was only 2 or maybe younger, or maybe 3. Anyway, I can't remember. He started crying, like, why are you crying at that grandchild and not the others? Do you love him the most? And the guide said to me, no, but that's him. He's already incarnated. And I'm like, oh.
Interesting.
Right.
That leads to some of the book learning on some of the stuff that I have, where they say that we don't bring our entire soul into this incarnation. It couldn't handle our entire soul's energy anyway. So some of it is left there on the other side. And most of
it is left there. Like, we extend an aspect of our soul into a physical experience, but most of us is, back in that place, like from the source where we are. We are in that place. And when we sleep at night, the earth experience is so challenging that the body doesn't need rest. And I've experienced this as well. When I was young, I spent 3 or 4 days without any sleep, but I was just having a rip-roaring time. And on the last day, I did a dance routine with a couple of hundred other people in a big center we had here. It was a simultaneous dance routine with dancers all over the world, and it was a world record. We set a world record. And I had been partying and working for 3 days without sleep, and then I went and did this dance routine, and I experienced no tiredness at all. I remember I was flatting with my brother at the time in this little flat, and I remember saying to Peter, why am I tired? Why am I tired? I was just having too much of a good time. So it's not the body that needs sleep, it's the soul. It's like when we're engaging in limiting thinking, do you notice that when you're really upset how tired you are? Like when you're really depressed, you can't even get out of bed. So it's our thinking that creates exhaustion. And when we sleep at night, that aspect of our soul reemerges back to pure positive energy, and we drink of that infinite potential of who we are. We remember, and then we come back hopefully refreshed. But we do come back into the thought forms we leave in, like the dominant thought forms we're thinking at the time. If you're thinking about something when you fall asleep at night, usually when you wake up, it's still right there on your mind. if you've watched a movie before you've slept at night, it's still there when you wake up in the morning, because those thought forms are still sort of, hovering around you as you enter in and out of the body. But yeah, we're all astral traveling at night. It's just that we don't remember because we pass through that veil of forgetfulness. But yeah, it's that aspect of our soul that needs the rest, not the body so much. The body has its own consciousness and it can just keep on going. But we need to remember and have that rest from our negative thinking, our worries, like, how can I get what I want? I don't like this. I wish I was younger. I wish I was thinner. I wish I was richer. I wish I was happier. I wish I was in love. What?
Well, and that also, there's certain groups of people that I work with, and boy, I just have a conversation with them and I'm exhausted and that I need a nap. But, as soon as I break from them, I feel fine, and it feels like on a consciousness level, definitely. So
yeah,
I can see that. Yeah.
Some of the other questions: can souls help those in need on earth, or do they need permission? Again, agreement, because we're here and there simultaneously. And that was illustrated in a book called Already Here by Dr. Leo Gallen and his son Christopher. Remember that book? And his son had a mentally challenged son who lived to about 20, 21, 22 maybe, and who died probably about 25 years ago or 30 years ago now. Anyway, and 20 odd years later, he put out the book. But Christopher, after he died, as this very challenging human being who was challenging to his parents and everyone around him, was this masterful soul, channeled all this information to him. And he was saying to Dr. Leo Galland one day, how we talk about you when we're together in spirit, and we talk about you and your personality and what you think and all this stuff. He said, you often talk about, here and there, like when I die, I'll be with you, Christopher. And he said, but you're already here, Dad. Like, you don't have to die to be here. You're already here with me. And he called the book Already Here. So we think about there's here and there, but there's here and there happening simultaneously. And as psychics, what we do is we tap into that vibration, that realm, and we can speak to, dead me or soul me. Like we can channel any consciousness. We don't have to channel just dead people. Like before Michael Tamura left his body, he would come to me and talk to me in spirit, like a spirit guide would. But he was still living out a physical life.
I remember you would get messages often.
Yeah.
I do recall. Garnet Schulhauser's book has a beautiful explanation. And it's really funny because right before I read the passage in the book about like the veil and, is the veil thinning and things like that. My gifted friend and her daughter that we were talking about earlier, they echoed each other. And in Garnet's book, it's worded like the veil really is just a mutable shroud that we're actually swimming, if you will, in at all times. So it's not like I just cross a threshold and I'm on the other side. It's actually around us all the time. And like you say, I can tap into that and tap into, because there's no time in there. So I can tap into older me, younger me, loved ones on the other side, loved ones who haven't even incarnated yet.
Exactly.
But it was just such a beautiful illustration for me that echoes what you were just saying. It's all right here all the time.
It's all right here all the time. I was talking to someone on the show. We were talking about the veil. I might have been on somebody else's show. I can't remember. But and the guides say, because I've often posed this question, like, how does the veil work? I mean, what's the mechanics of it? And they said, it's actually your DNA. It's like how we've shut down aspects of the DNA that doesn't give you that psychic access or that access to other dimensions, other realms. And as we awaken as a human consciousness, it's like that DNA is coming back online. That is what creates the river of oblivion, or the veil, the shroud. It's actually the mechanics of it lives on the DNA. And I'm like, interesting. Because some people, because there is a spiritual DNA, like Francis Ray Key from the Team Book spoke about, there is an etheric and astral, energetic body that creates the physical body. that when you access the energetic body and you change things in the energetic body, it will manifest and your physical body will change. That's how miracle healings can take place. So there is a spiritual and what we call physical DNA. And so it's designed on the etheric DNA as well, how we close down that access to our omnipresence, if you like, our infinite creative potential. Yeah.
Well, then have you heard, and I'm looking to see if there's a question in here because I want to honor these questions because they're so good, but I've heard prophesied, if you will, from some of my gifted friends who are like you, just such a direct channel to your guides, but they say that that we're going to become these bodies of light or light bodies, and all of the DNA that has been shut down in us is going to be activated.
Well, I've had this conversation with the guides. They said that's an experience you can have if you choose to, but collectively on Earth, no, not in the near future. But collectively on Earth, yes, we are awakening to more access, but not full access like that. I mean, we've come into this denser experience to have that limiting perspective so that we can create from that perspective and learn and grow as souls. And we're moving into a time where we're gaining more access, but not that rainbow body type access. I mean, a lot of people who talk about the fifth dimensional living and stuff on Earth will reemerge into that living, but it's not necessary what's happening on planet Earth. Like, yes, we are shifting, but we're not shifting that dramatically yet. It is possible in many years to come. But yeah, we're not all going to become rainbow bodies.
Yeah. Well, then does he ask in here, when are we done incarnating? Because we all of us that are a little bit open are always like, I'm done. This is my last one. And we probably get to the other side and laugh.
We're never done. We were having this chat actually before we went live about where do we come with, like, spinning off from the source. And Garnet uses the word spin off from the source. And you asked a really great question. I can't remember what it was. And I got the vision of a soul who spins off from the source, like an aspect that creates a soul. The soul spins off an aspect of itself, like a holographic aspect, so it contains the whole within the part. Spins off from the source, and then this fresh little soul, if you like, again, analogy, because we're talking in linear human mind perspective, can take on incarnations and choose what it wants to experience and gain all this knowledge and gain all this perspective and experience. I've been a planet, I've been a dog, I've been a human, I've been an alien, I've been sick, I've been a master, I've been a sinner, I've been a saint. We can gain all this perspective. And because there is no time, so the concept of infinity is really hard to grasp in human minds, but there is no beginning and no end. But what they showed me, that if you choose to, as a soul, as an oversoul who has gained all this perspective, you can reemerge back into the totality of source. And they were showing me this spinning, and you can spin off all that knowledge and then spin out again from the source completely fresh and new again and start all over again. But you're not born and you don't die, but you can, like, wash yourself of all experience. But that experience doesn't, like, go nowhere. It becomes the totality of source. Source gains all that perspective and experience that you've lived all your lives. But you can wash yourself. And they showed me this spinning, and I was saying to Kristen, it's like, when you put lettuce in a spinner and you spin it, like, this is the image they were giving me, and all the water flies off. It's like a bit like that. It all flies off. And then we were talking about, washing ourselves of the negative concepts when we reemerge from the physical body into, like, a lighter body, or the astral or spiritual bodies. And we can rinse ourselves, rid ourselves, or wash ourselves of all the negative ideas of who we think we are. I'm alone, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, all that stuff that we engage in as humans. You rinse yourself off so that you reemerge back to pure positive perspective. But it's not the same experience as this spinning that they were showing me. Spinning off all that.
It's different.
Because you still retain identity, you still retain personality, you still retain aspects of the ego. There's a lot that you retain: memory, But you're positive, like my friend said, I saw my brother and he was bright and shiny and young and beautiful, like, you know, just like when you see Andrew in spirit, he's like happy and like, but he's still Andrew. He still has Andrew's identity and his personality. So you retain all that, but you just wash yourself of all the limiting ideas of yourself that we've come to experience. Yeah.
So let's go back to the spinning off, not necessarily the washing of the real negative things, but the spinning off that you described of the actual experiences to become that more fresh, clean to experience again, like maybe to become curious again. Right. But what is done with all of that I've flung off? In my salad spinner, I spin all the water off, and then I pour it down the sink. So where does it go?
It goes down the sink. Well, it doesn't sort of like, you don't lose it. It just becomes the totality of the knowledge that is all that is.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
I mean, it doesn't, but it's all there, you know, like you can, when I talk about my guides and they say they're a stream of consciousness, they never really gave me identity. They said, we can come to you as identity if you choose, and you can speak to different collectives and different identities if you choose, but we are a stream of consciousness. We are the totality of all the lives that have been lived on Earth and on other planets, all that knowledge that's been lived. All that wisdom, you can tap into that wisdom, and that's who we are. We are that knowledge. So when you ask your questions, we can come to you as knowledge rather than identity. And again, they say if you choose identity, we can come to you as, like, again, when I asked about telepathy, and I was asking about how when we're physical, that was the grays that came to me to explain that. So I saw that identity rather than tapping into that river of knowledge, that stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't highlight question number 6, but this brings me to that question because this is something, just at least even the first part of it. I think about this often.
Who organizes spirits and what can you do and what goals do they have to accomplish? I think we sort of spoke about that and said that there's like the show, you could do shows on that. I mean, there is no who that organizes you. There is you that organizes you. And then you ask for help. Like, I want to have an earth incarnation. Why? Because I want to experience this. Let's talk about it I want to experience the aspect of love that is called forgiveness. I can't understand what it feels like to want to have to forgive somebody, because I can't even understand what it feels like to be hurt or slighted by somebody. And so you then ask your spirit team who organizes. Yeah, you move into like a spirit family, a soul group, a spirit team, and you ask your brothers and sisters in spirit to help you. So they come in as an incarnate, to incarnate. I will give you that. I'll be your violent father, and I'll abuse you and beat you up as a child. And then as you move into your spiritual journey, you'll have to learn to forgive. And so I'll give you that experience. But it really comes from a place of, I love you so much that I'll take on that amount of density to forget who I am, that I will hurt you in some way. Yeah, so there is no authority that organizes. There is just infinite choice. Like, you look upon what's available and you choose, and then you ask people to help you have that experience. No, there's no overlord like God doling out, like, you have to do this, like religion,
right?
Depicts. God is
heavens.
There is just you as a part of infinite creative potential, the unified field of infinite creative possibility and potential, like Yvonne Ballard, or Naya would say. She called herself Naya after I changed her name. This point of consciousness streaming through the universe, exploring the inside of an atom or the multiverse, and going to all these different realms and having a look. So you can have a look at all this stuff and then choose. Yeah, freedom. Infinite freedom and creativity. It seems mind-boggling to the human mind perspective, but yeah, there is no overlord, no devil or God saying you're bad, you're good. Yeah. What happens to those earth souls who have committed terrible crimes while living? Is there such a place of hell? We've spoken about that. Tell us about the halls of learning. Many interplanetary beings have been recorded on Earth. Mostly I have heard in English countries. What about sightings in other countries such as China and Russia? Yeah, speak to someone like Preston Dennett or any UFO researcher. There are sightings and experiences all over the world in all different countries, all over the world. It's not just English countries. I think we only see them online in English countries because we speak English. But what happens to those souls who have committed terrible crimes while they're living? One of the things that people as humans, we love to do is we love to think about punishment.
Retribution. Yep.
Retribution. If you've done something terrible, there are consequences. And so we come up with this idea of religion's done it too. If you're a terrible person, then you're going to hell and you're going to be punished in eternity forever because you've been terrible. That just doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen. It can if you want to. You want to create a hell realm and be punished, which feels like eternity. But yeah, there is just experience and experience and experience. And as I said, many of the experiences that we have here on Earth have been organized or agreed to as a soul. Like in this life, you're going to murder me. Or in that life, you're going to rape me. Or in this, like, again, coming back to Garnet's books, which is the story that I put in Awakened by Death. I actually reached out to Garnet. I reached out to his publishers, Ozark Mountain Press, and I said, can I put this chapter in the book? Because I love this perspective where in his astral form, when he was out flying around the cosmos with his spirit guide, Albert, he went to a psychic session from the other side, from spirit. So he watched the human parents contact a psychic here on Earth and speak to a soul, which was the soul or the spirit of their daughter, who had been violently raped and murdered as a young child, most heinous crime. And the conversation, so Garnet as a spirit watched that interaction from that side rather than watching it from the physical perspective. He was watching it from the spiritual perspective, and how the questions coming from the parents and then the psychic tuning in and watching the little girl who was in the identity of the little girl as she died, contacting the psychic and talking to the psychic and listening to what the little girl said, and then how the psychic interpreted it. Not always spot on, but, we do our best. And how not upset at all this little girl was at being brutally raped and murdered, and that it was a soul contract between the parents and what they wanted to learn. They wanted to learn about commitment and staying together in the face of trauma and tragedy. The two souls that were husband and wife, that were the parents of the little girl, had this agreement that this would happen with the little girl. I don't understand the whole raping business. But anyway, maybe to make it even more traumatic, I don't know. But the mother had carried a lot of guilt because she was at the park and she could see her little girl, and then she looked at her phone to answer a text, and then looked up and the little girl was gone. And then the next day they found her body, right? So she and her husband were in terrible grief, and they didn't believe in anything particularly psychic. Maybe they were religious, I don't know. But they did reach out to a psychic to, I think the husband organized it because the mother was in so much grief and so much guilt, and then contacting the soul of the little girl on the other side, and the little girl saying, this was the agreement. This is what we chose to learn. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. All is well. Yeah, it was I'm going to cry thinking about it. It was such an amazing chapter. So I put that in the book, Awakened by Death.
Yeah.
But that's actually a direct chapter out of one of Garnet's books. I think it's out of Garnet's fourth book. But he allowed me to put that in the book, Awakened by Death, because I just thought that was such a important conversation, chapter to have. What am I doing?
And when you're speaking about, why did it have to be rape or something? And I read this in Garnet's books, and it again helped me wrap my head around some of these things, like you said earlier, free will, curiosity, choice, and things like that. And Garnet's books aren't the only place now that I've read this, but it makes sense to me. We come down with a plan, and we come down with an ideal. And, there are choices that can be made, and ego maybe steps in, and maybe somebody who's really, really good at in a soul, they're really good with words and commanding a presence and talking people into doing things. And that person could come down on this planet wanting to be like, I'm going to go help that community because I'm going to really bring that community together. I'm going to be born and I'm going to be really good at this. And yet ego steps in or something shifts and that person's manipulation becomes a cult leader or something negative, and those things take over because of choice or this dense planet. And so I don't believe that man, whoever raped that poor little girl, chose to come in as a rapist, but things happen. And
maybe he was part of the soul agreement.
And could have been all along. We don't know. But that does give me some peace to wrap my head around. Like, are people just born evil, or they're just born to be that bad guy that, I don't know. So,
well, no one is inherently evil.
No, I know that now, but
I have to say that
young,
when I was speaking to Dr. Gallen about his book Already Here with Christopher, his son, he said that Christopher from the other side said that there is energies or people or identity that stays in that negative energy and just stays there, that you can't fix them, you can't heal them. And I remember, because he's a doctor and I'm a healer, I'm saying, no, surely we all come from pure positive. Surely you can help them. You can help them. You can help them. And he said, Christopher said from the other side, there are some that you just can't help. And I asked the guides about that. And they said, well, if you're creating a matrix of density, then there has to be energies that sustain that vibration. And there are people contracted to sustain that energy. And I'm like, that makes sense, right? That makes sense. If people are wanting to have these experiences, these denser experiences, these contrasting experiences, then there has to be an energy that sustains the matrix in order to have that. Like, does that make sense? It made sense to me when my guides told me.
It really does, because actually, when that entity that chose to come in, possibly as this dark entity to fulfill those contracts, when they get to the other side, they're not going to be judged for being bad.
No, because I often come back to the analogy of the House of Horrors at the fun park, right? Earth is the fun park and it has a House of Horrors. And there are people, the maintenance people, that sustain the frightening things that happen in the House of Horrors. Like, somebody has to look after it so that you can go in there and have that experience of fear. Or the person that looks after the roller coaster ride, you get on that roller coaster ride and you want to vomit, you're in so much terror. I mean, somebody has to look after the roller coaster ride so that it works, so that you can have your experience of terror. And it's the same with the denser energies that create limiting experiences of separation and fear, and there is some energy that needs to sustain that. We're running out of time. It's gone so quickly, hasn't it?
I
have to do a station ID break. I'm going to, where's my station ID break? Here we go.
You're listening to ATP-Media, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM, syndicated radio, hitting about 120 countries and streaming on 8 platforms.
And we're doing a Q&A today, where there's a million questions. We haven't even got through many of them. It's Karen here with Kristen, Miss Smash and Karen Swain, talking about what happens when you die, talking all about spirit, and a few more of his questions. Let me think. Who allocates us as spirit guides, and do they stay with us forever for the duration of our life? Can guides change? How do you qualify to become a spirit guide? Okay, all these are great questions. Who allocates? Usually you do. Can guides change? Yes. Just like anything that you do here on Earth, maybe you work on a movie and you make a movie and there's a whole team around you that help you do that. And then you work on another movie and now there's another team. Depending on what you want to do on Earth, if you want to be a writer, there will be spirit guides that help you with your writing. If you want to be a spiritual teacher, there will be spirit guides that help you with that. If you want to be a singer, an accountant, depends on what you do as you move through your life and do different things. If you want to be a mother, if you want to be a father, there are spirit guides that come and go depending on their expertise. Like I've been a writer many times, or I was William Shakespeare. I remember Garnet said he met William Shakespeare and he said to his guide, Albert, is he helping me with my writing? And he said, no.
But he did have a guide. Oh, I wish I could remember. It escaped me just a moment ago that Garnet did have a guide that was
helping him with his writing.
That was a famous writer.
That was a famous writer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, they can change. Who allocates them? Usually you do, because remember, we're not just here all the time. We're here and there simultaneously. So you can go up to William Shakespeare and say, hey, I'm going to write some books. Do you want to help me? Or you can go to somebody. Yeah, it's like you allocate them. And what is the lifespan of a spirit? Eternity is the lifespan of a spirit. Can spirits procreate? That's interesting. I think that can you make new friends when you die? Who allocates us a spirit guides? I think I said that. And for the duration, can I? Yeah. Is there such thing as religion in spirit? No. Religion is a human concept. Tell me more about the advanced planets and advanced beings, who created them and why. Is there something called a twin soul? Why are men so different to women? Yeah, I don't think we're going to get through all these questions. How's the chat going? What are they asking in the chat? Our Creator made man in his image, but there are many faults with man. Then who created other beings who are not the same as humans? Do we all astral travel when we sleep? Yes. Can we live in parallel universes at the same time? Yes. Can we recall the wisdom that we have gained from being in previous lives? Absolutely. And we usually do. Often our desires and the things that we want to do in this life are influenced by our other lives. And things like maybe we had a life where we felt very alone and never got married and have children. And then you might come into a different life and say, I want to be a mother and have a big family, or I want to be a father and have a big family. That's the influence of the desire birthed in one life being carried over to be fulfilled in this life. How do we recognize humans who walk the earth but came from other planets? That's a good question. And I've met many of them, and many of us do come from other planets, because what we call star seeds are souls that have been playing on other planets where life isn't as dense or as hard or as challenging, who understand their connection to source more fully, and then they take on a physical life and they say, I really understand what it feels like to be a physical incarnate and be more connected to source. So I'm going to take on a human life and I'm going to show people how we can do that as humans. And then many of them who come into the human life perspective forget, and they take on all the same drama. But they do their best. And then some have total recall, like we talked about walk-ins on the show, where galactic souls or advanced souls walk into a human body, usually a body that's been discarded, so it's usually sick, and they have to renovate the body and purge it of all its illnesses and negative thinking. And the advanced soul, some do and some don't, depending on their level of mastery. And then they become consciousness teachers or spiritual teachers. But there's lots of questions.
Yeah.
Is there something called
in the chat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the chat, there's more comments. Like maybe life on Earth is like an escape room,
An escape room.
Yeah. Do you have those in Australia where you go and it's all set up to be like a maze and a puzzle, but you're trapped in this room with a couple other people and there's clues? Like people pay to do this instead of going to the... Yeah. Do you not have those in Australia?
I haven't really heard about them. I'm sure we have them, but I've not been to one. I've not experienced it. But is life on Earth like an escape room? I love that concept.
Yeah.
Why not? Life on Earth can be heaven or hell, depending on how you think about it. You can be in a physical incarnated body and engage in your negative thinking and think that this is hell on Earth. Or you can be in a physically incarnated body and think about everything that is blissful. And I have someone that I've had on the show that her house burnt down, and she was saying after she lost everything, her and her husband had everything, she said, I thought about people that are starving and living in slums in India, and I thought about how much better off than them I am. Even though I've lost everything, I'm still not there. And that made her overcome the trauma of losing everything. Like, we can
we can experience the trauma in life and not suffer, or we can experience it and suffer, depending on how we think about it. Yeah, we can think of life as an escape room, or think about as an earthly paradise. I know that many ETs look on this earthly paradise like the earth itself is a paradise. The oceans, like the Ponti, think that the oceans are so magnificent, and they just think of Earth like this incredible, blissful paradise, like just such a paradise. And most of the people that are here are not enjoying it. They're worrying and bitching and fighting and starting wars and killing each other.
Yeah.
And they go, why? Like, why? Why are you doing that?
I took a course a few years ago in the Munai Ki, which is like the Peruvian shamanism teachings. And in that course, I really had a change of heart. You know, one of the exercises through like meditative process, he gave us all one of those little clementine oranges. And through, you know, we did this guided meditation, like learning to really savor this little orange. And it actually really shifted my perspective on, like, you know, you and I on the beginning of this call, I'm in a tank top and you're in sweater and turtleneck, and we're on different sides of the planet. But I walk outside, it's 100 degrees outside here in Salt Lake City, and I feel the heat on my skin. And I used to get so frustrated and want to dive into the air conditioning, but now I'm like, I get to feel that. I get to feel that on my skin. And what harm is it going to be? And am I really uncomfortable? I'm not really uncomfortable. And so that's just a small way that, you know, taking on these learnings and doing some of these experiences have done for me personally. So
yeah. What's that saying? It might be a Shakespearean saying, there is no something that thinking makes it so. There is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Yeah. Is that a Shakespeare saying? I know it's a saying somewhere. Yeah. Our powers of thought. It's like, what's your perspective? How are you thinking about this? Is this something that's torturing you, or is this something that you're loving? My girlfriend, Nikki, that died, that was born thalidomide affected. She died at 40. She came to me. I found out she was dead. I was very upset because I spoke to her like 2 nights before, and she assured me she was okay. I said, are you okay? Are you okay? I didn't ask her if she was going to stay in her body. I just asked her if she was okay, and she assured me she was okay. And then she dies, and I'm like confused. You told me you were going to be okay. She came to me later and she said, of course I'm okay. I'm just not in my body. You didn't ask me that question. You asked me if I was okay, and I answered, I'm okay. So anyway, she said to me, just after I found out, she said, savor the feeling of the ocean on your skin. She said, all the things that you experience here on planet Earth, the taste of something delicious, the heat on your body, or the feeling of the waves on your skin. She said, for me, they're just a memory now. And yeah, she was just giving me this lesson of, I'm going to cry again, of how we don't appreciate the little things in life. Like we complain about stuff all the time, but we could savor it. We could love it. We could just love the experience of being human, because it's just for a very short period of time inside the eternity that is the story of the soul.
If I could share one last experience too, because we are running out of time, through a guided meditation, and I was in that open space. My late hubby, I felt him come up behind me and play with my hair and kind of nuzzle my hair. And then I heard him say to me, I miss your smell. I miss the smell of your hair.
Yeah.
And that was something that we talked about often, like, you know, the pheromones, or the, you know, how you love, and does one child smell like the other? And I was like, oh, he misses that. I mean, miss, I don't know how much, but that's the words he chose to use to translate.
Yeah.
To me.
Well,
So
the experience of smelling when you don't have a nose is different than when you do have a nose.
Mm-hmm.
The experience of eating or tasting is different when you have taste buds than when you don't have taste buds.
Mm-hmm.
But you have memory. Like Nikki said, for me, they're just a memory now. Like you can have memory of it. So you can bring up the memory of the sensation, but it's not exactly the same as having a physical body and having that physical sensation. Something Eric Medhus said when his mother, who killed himself when he was young about a decade ago, and he's a spirit guide, said, what do you miss about being human? And he said that like bumping up against solidity, like having that
that solid feeling. And that made me think, it's like if you're a spirit and everything is just energy in this quantum soup, there is no solidity, like the experience of solidity. If everything, like quantum science says that everything is just atoms and space, like how do we experience solidity? That's another question. That's a whole show. That's a whole show. Like that's a whole show. Like how does that work? If everything is energy, like inside the atom there is more space than there is particles, and even when you dissect the particles, again it's just energy and information spinning in space. Everything is just energy. Everything is energy. How do we experience solidity? Amazing. Yeah, think about that. Like obviously the ETs knows they can walk through walls, beam you up to a spaceship. They've got that one covered. Yeah, we've got so much to learn. We're out of time. This was fun. Let's do it again, Kristen. Let's do it again. Kristen's starting her own podcast too soon, putting her on the spot, talking about all things spirit and life after death and stuff like that. She's going to interview lots of fabulous people she knows, and she's got
like
a lot to share as well. Well, like me, and a lot of people you've met through the IANs. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, let's do this again when I have a guest that doesn't show up. Ross Coulthard was supposed to be in today, and he never got back to me after 6 emails. He said yes on the first email and never returned my other email. So I thought, we'll do this. So this was fun. Love you big time, honey one. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen that have been online. Sorry we didn't get to all your questions. We had so many questions. And thanks, Peter, for sending all those questions. See you next time. Bye for now.
You're listening to ATP Media, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM. Syndicated radio hitting about